Ann.
Does
I think I'm gonna call the meeting to order.
No, it's a different Ann Gray, Michael.
All right.
At 7:05 p.m. I'm gonna call the meeting to order.
Thanks, Linda.
Okay.
I saw your draft material and I shared some comments. There's no real changes, just some clarifications is all I was trying to do.
Yep.
And a couple of additions. And Ann had sent one final addition that I thought was a really good idea.
And I may not have seen that because I've been off my email for a bit. So what I would like to do is, since we've done roll call, I would like to adopt the agenda. I have two changes, and before we get into our agenda, I'd like to read a statement regarding the counting. I've had 8 million questions from people of what took so long, and rather than try and answer individual emails, messages, and posts on Facebook, I choose to do it here formally as in our committee. And also at the end, I would like to add an item 7, our next meeting that involves the new committee members. So without further ado, I'm going to read the statement. What took so long? I've received many inquiries as to what took so long with the ballot counting. Wasn't it supposed to take less time if the third-party vendor did it? When the third-party vendor arrived on Saturday morning, they brought along all the unopened mail ballots they had received. These had been already registered by them. They then collected the drop box ballots N&E collected at the administration ballot box and added them into their registration system, giving them the total number of ballots cast up to then. They were not allowed to begin processing ballots until the close of in-person voting, when they had all ballots in their possession. During the morning, the outer envelopes were opened with a high-speed opener, but still not processed. At 12:30, it had been anticipated that N&E would help to open the ballot envelopes and remove the ballots under the watchful eyes of the Inspector of Elections. However, SVCA bylaws state in Article 3, Section 3F, the Nominations and Elections Committee shall supervise the handling of mailed ballots, supervise the counting of all ballots, and submit a written report to the President of the Board detailing the results of the election. Shall supervise meant that the UNELECT representatives had to open all those envelopes and remove the ballots before scanning. Just a misunderstanding on both our parts. Even with video of the process, we could still not assist. Given the restrictions of COVID, additional people in the counting area would have been challenging. 2 volunteers set up to help with this is what we needed to have arranged for beforehand and planned to socially distance. The actual scanning is much faster, and when this occurs, a report is generated that records each ballot. Ballot errors called exceptions will still slow down the process. The ballot report has a section for those exceptions and records when a member has failed to vote a measure, changed their vote, overvoted, used an incorrect method of voting on their ballot. Each of these errors must be examined, and the N&E committee reviews each of them to determine the intent of the voter and verify it to the reporting program. Once this is done, the program is then asked to count the vote again. In about 10 minutes, a report is printed out to be attached to the certification packet, and the unofficial results are placed in the PowerPoint and presented to the membership. The N&E could not risk invalidating the entire election just to speed up the process. I believe that it would be in conflict with the fiduciary responsibility of this committee. I believe what we did was the correct thing to ensure an election that was done according to the bylaws. So yes, the third-party process is quicker. I would clearly have them handle our election again and simply be prepared to have a couple of non-committee volunteers to assist them opening ballots if permitted under future quarantine rules. It has been clearly a better process for the community, and I hope this satisfies all the questions surrounding why everything took so long. And there you have it.
Thank you, Linda. Very nicely done. That may be something useful for you to either have posted to the internet or printed in the views or both.
I may put it also under the AGM button on the website and stuff.
That's what I mean.
Yep.
On the internet.
I can't do anything in the November views. I've already asked and it's full of stuff. So they might get in my report, but that's it, for the final for the thing. But you're right, Larry, it might be a real good idea.
Do you want it included in the minutes?
Yes, I will include it in the minutes. I'll send a copy to go with the minutes when they're done.
I don't know how to get sound on.
Oh, that's so funny, Ann.
Oh, stop it.
You're listed under Don Jomtaz.
Yeah, I see that. I might as well have as much as an airhead.
I might not be able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, you called somebody an airhead.
That's me.
No, it's okay, Ann. I just read a statement and you've got a copy of it, that
Yes, I do.
explaining what happened that day.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
So we're going to move on to item number 4, which is the 2020 AGM certification.
Yes.
The meeting itself and the certification. I have made a change to the report. Originally, I had said there were 3145 ballots. I added in, unfortunately, because it's done differently now, the 4 ballots that were mailed to the association. Those are included in the initial ballots that were mailed by Unilect. When AMS did it for us, they did those 4 by hand separately so that they could get a date on them, because as we all know, you don't get a postage date on the mass mailings. So I have corrected that number. Don had a correction for me on page 2 of the report, where I listed the voting issues. It's toward the bottom of the page, where I said there was 1 vote that had 2 votes. No, it should be there was 1 property that had 2 votes, as there was a change in ownership and 1 vote was invalidated. Nice catch, Don.
Yeah, good catch, Don.
On the spreadsheet, I've made the same change, and I'm probably going to have to indicate why those 4 ballots, and I may just take out the number 4 there, and just that I've indicated that ballots were sent to the board secretary, the parliamentarian, the entity chair, and the admin office, and just take the number 4 out of there. I think it's going to make it a lot cleaner. And anybody will go, but it doesn't add up, and there's nothing worse than when numbers don't add up. I don't know if any of you have any questions. These numbers come from Unilect. I did add a line under total number of replacement ballots. Normally, the only thing we indicate are mail-in ballots and members that are members in good standing. But because we mailed to them and they had a count of those ballots, and then we had a count of our ballots, I simply divided out mail-in ballots and then drop off admin ballots, so that there were 2, it represented the 2 different sets of returns. There were, and I don't know how we did it, there were no budget only ballots. Every single ballot was legit.
That's it's not just legit, they were legit, but it's nice to know that people have been willing and able to pay their dues.
Yeah.
And that staff has worked so diligently over the last couple of years to bring that percentage up to a really, really outstanding number.
Yeah, I know when I told Catherine we had no budgets only, she's going, really?
Yeah. It's our percentage is very high in the industry, from what I understand. I mean, I wouldn't know otherwise, but that's what I've heard.
Well, also speaks to the fact that they were conscientious in wanting to vote too.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. There were, we had, although some without a signature, I must say, there weren't many of those. Some years we have like over a dozen of those. Invalid ballots, we had some, and again, a minimum number than we've had in prior years, but people that only, and this happened only in the ballots at the drop box and admin,
Right.
returning them without the outer envelope with only the inner secrecy envelope. And there is no way to identify who that is to register a vote.
That's
But
right.
yep, that kind of sums it up for me rolling through all of this. We have our postal reports from everyone. The company Prestige Printing and Graphics is the company that printed our materials and mailed our materials. We have a postage receipt from them that, sometimes you get them from the post office, other times they basically sign and verify that's how much they paid for things and the number of ones that we had. We definitely are starting to have fewer and fewer international and out of country ballots. That's nice because it's like they cost almost twice as much as mailing here in the United States somewhere.
Has there been a big change in the number of Canadian folks? I mean,
I don't know.
I would expect the biggest change would be in the Chinese, the Hong Kong property owners.
I would have to look at a prior list. I know when I did it before, I think we had around, I want to say 158, 157.
That's what I recall. That's what I recall. Okay. All right.
So in looking at the invoice from Unilect, which is part of what I have to submit, the contract with them, the only two amounts that we have paid on are the estimated outbound postage and the estimated return postage. The postage that we paid was based on 1,900 absentee ballots. Now only 883 were returned to them. I know that they had to mail out 40 replacement ballots, so there'll be a little bit of extra postage there. But she said there would be a refund in their final invoice to us on any unused money that was in that account that was for the prepaid returns. And I thought a lot of people did a nice job of using that option.
Linda, do the foreigners vote? Do they return those ballots and vote? Just out of curiosity.
How do I say this? When you get a master registration list, I always get rid of the mailing addresses and it only gives the property addresses when re-register here. But I bet you I could ask Unilect and I think we might be able to get an answer from them on that. From their master list of, how many of the 883 did you get back that were from out of country?
Yeah, they have a right to vote. There's no question about that. This is just curiosity and figuring out who actually votes and what we can.
And I wonder if we couldn't, I will ask that question. I can ask Catherine and she'll answer me because I bet you they keep the mailing addresses still for the member. I just don't do it here because it makes way too big a spreadsheet. And it's information that, to me, if I'm registering someone, it's just based on the property that they own, not where they live. So anyway.
Interesting to know.
Yes, you're right. And if I get the information, you will all know. So the next thing we have are 3 pages I find really interesting. They are the Unilect, the way they total things up. It's really clean. You know, it's like it gives you, you know, like to the budget measure. It gives you how many, it gives you the percent. It's not sitting down there with the calculator, with the master counter and figuring out what was that. It's just boom, it's there. The number of valids, you'll note, are only 96.49%. But then it explains down below that there were so many no response, multiple responses, or invalid responses. And then all of those total up to the total number that were counted and 100% of them all. It's a little bit more information than we've ever had before.
Is it useful?
Yes,
Is it
very useful.
okay?
You know, and it's really nice how much of that information that we have, you know, it's, you know, like some people, you know, it's like sometimes if they've overvoted, undervoted, or had some kind of invalid response, I think Don can answer me. Some people kind of made had funny ways of voting their ballots. And that's where the exceptions show up and you clear them up. I had to leave at one point and join the meeting for a while. And I know Don and Andrew worked their way through through those exceptions, because until you do that and you make the computer program happy, you can't run the program and get a final total. But when it happens so quick.
Linda, what do you mean by funny ways?
Interesting.
How do I say it?
Drawing smiley faces on them, or?
Well, yeah, and some people wrote comments,
Okay.
you know, and it was like, you just have to be there and look at them and just say, why would somebody do that? You know, especially when the rest of their ballot's fine.
Yeah, people
If
like
there's a
to make
comment written on the ballot, it won't read it.
Yeah.
And it kicks
Right.
it back out.
right, and people love to make comments, and they're used to doing it in the old days because, you know, it never made any difference. It's sad to say, but the truth is the comment never went anywhere. However, they're used to doing it, and now it just screws up the ballot.
There were a couple of outer envelopes. I can't remember
I have
who was vetting with me that day. There was some guy had a real funny loopy signature on it and wrote and printed on there, "This is my real signature. I expect my ballot," oh, it was you, Bob, "to be counted."
I thought it was a woman that did it, though.
Oh, it was? Well, let me tell you, her ballot was counted.
I remember the SGM last year there was not very nice comments, a lot.
Oh, definitely. Lots
Yeah.
of them. But
The only
anyway,
observation I have of
go ahead.
The mismarked or the ballots that got kicked out for review is that when we were doing it in-house in the counting room, the same thing happened. Nothing was different. Ballots would get flagged by a counter because they were unreadable or they were unclear. And it was easy to, at that point, to pull that out, gather, make a decision. Well, the rest of the counting still went on. It only affected that one station. In this process, those ballots got flagged and kicked out after everything was counted. So they all had to get taken one by one. And that was a hang up at the end of getting the final tally out. That was all. But it was basically the same process.
What's fascinating is when you look at the computer screen that he has, half of it's filled with little teeny tiny boxes. And then they're either red or some of them were red, some of them were yellow, but they were the exceptions. And he could click on that and it would bring up that ballot on the screen. And you could look at it and you could see what the problem was. And then Don and I sat there and went, yes, we can tell what they did. Then Andrew would go in and tell the program, okay, this is all right. This is the way you count this ballot. And you have to go through all those and have those all resolved before you can take a final count.
It's just nice to know that there is a record
Mhm.
that can be located pretty darn easily.
So
And just
Linda,
for-
you
go ahead.
didn't physically pull the ballot out of the list. You looked at an image.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, if I needed to, Nancy, I can go to the list and I can go to the actual ballot and find that actual ballot still. Just takes a lot of digging. Don can tell you that. We ran into a problem with one of them that somehow the ballot, when it went through the scanner, it was folded in half and you could only see part of the ballot. And we went hunting through a couple of batches of ballots to find what we were looking for to be able to do it. But it's there. It's just much easier to look at things and resolve them. And like I say, had we known that we need someone and should we use them again, hey, no problem with getting a couple of non-member committee member volunteers to help out just to get the ballots exposed so they can scan them.
Just
You
for
should all
the
know that we,
just for the
Go ahead.
benefit of the new committee members, the major issue for going with an outside vendor is to get Sudden Valley members out of the process so that there is far less opportunity to question whether or not somebody inappropriately tampered with the process or the data. As you have a completely neutral party, they don't care one way or the other. They're just doing their job. And now, yeah, it might have been hard to find that one folded ballot, but if you need to go back, there is still the paper record.
Can I ask a question?
certainly,
Mrs. Bonk W. Anyway, so I'm looking at your, I guess this is a spreadsheet. I don't know. It's the thing from
Yep.
Unilect. And just say, for instance, measure one, the budget. It shows that there were total valid 1458, but the total of votes, or I guess ballots that were returned, is 1511.
yeah.
So the no response would be people that just didn't vote at all on the budget. They didn't make a response.
And if you look at Unilect's, how do I say it? On that first measure in particular, you're seeing approved 747, correct? And you're seeing reject 711.
Yeah.
That says there were 1,458 people altogether voted on that measure. Below that, it says no response. There were 44 people out of the total 1,511 that didn't even respond to that vote, to that particular measure.
They didn't check a choice at all.
That's right. They're completely blank. Don can tell you it's the truth.
Wow.
Yeah, Michael,
Well,
it
that's
makes
not
no sense.
unusual at all.
Yeah, it makes no sense to me either, but hey, people are free not to vote if they don't want to.
Okay. And then multiple responses was they checked two boxes.
Yep, they checked both yes and no.
Oh,
Exactly.
huh.
Well, then what's invalid response?
That means we can't tell what they meant. That's where you get one of those funny little marks on there. You get
Okay.
somebody
Okay.
writing
I just
something
wanted to
over it.
clarify that. Yeah, that all makes sense now. Okay. I can't,
Okay.
it doesn't
Hey.
it does not make sense, but I
Yeah.
understand it.
Hey, Linda, does invalid, doesn't that also include double voting where you vote yes and no?
Oh,
I'm not for sure. Don, help me with this.
I mean, it should, but I don't
If
know.
there's a ballot issue that was a yes or no vote and both were voted, it would get kicked out as invalid.
what about
It's the
multiple
same as voting for
response?
two candidates when there's only one selection. I mean, I don't know.
Well, what
Nan-
about multiple response when they
Nan-
click yes and no to the budget.
That's
Nancy,
what I mean. That's what I mean, Nancy.
I
Mo-
believe,
Invalid is something else.
Yeah. I believe, and I would have to ask Andrew and Catherine, when he goes in after we determine what it is, to resolve a ballot, he then has a choice on this little list of what he wants to do to resolve that questionable ballot. And
Okay.
it's probably a choice he makes, I would be guessing.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
You know, and I think that that's probably what we're seeing. So anyway, one of the things I wanted to share with you all while we were discussing things is we still have in the locked closet down in the multi-purpose room, every single ballot that was voted, they turned them all over to us. It's like we turned over our envelopes and ballots to them. They processed them. We have all of the envelopes with all of the signatures like we've always had. And we also still have a whole box of security envelopes. And if you'll remember correctly, last year during certification, we spent a lot of time counting and making things add up. But we still are in control of all of those documents that are that if we need to, we can go back and take a look at. Should anybody have any questions about the election? So
Are they matched with the voter, or they're just, you can't tell who voted with the ballot? Though?
No, you can't
No.
tell who voted. It's, you know, like you can see, you still see the signatures on the ballots, and you can still see your name imprinted on the empty envelopes. The ballots are just in the scanned order that they scanned them in.
Right. Just
Okay.
to clarify, the ballots themselves have no identifying mark.
All
The
right.
security envelopes have no identifying mark. Only the mailing envelope, whether it was mailed or dropped off, only that has any identifying mark.
Okay.
What's fascinating, I should go back. I watched them register some of our 500 ballots. And much like when you go into Fred Meyer, they have those little hand scanners that they click your card with. Catherine would sit and go through a stack of 25, and she'd turn them and he'd click, 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 and each one of them, it's registering them that quick. And they can go through 500 ballots in nothing flat. Just, it's so quick.
Linda, I've been dying to ask this. If you had the 2 volunteer counters, instead of having the Unilex people do it all, how much faster would that have gone?
No.
They wouldn't have counted, number one. They would have just opened the ballot and put it so that the other people could handle it.
Oh,
That's
right.
right.
But I mean the entire process from start to finish. How much faster would you have been upstairs with a result?
Catherine said they'd have been done by 3 o'clock.
Okay.
I believe that
So 2 hours?
Andrew and Catherine spent over 3 hours separating ballots from envelopes.
Wow.
So 2 more
Yeah.
people would have
Cut it
made
in half.
half that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, just to compare to previous years, when you had an entire team
Yeah.
of ballot counters, they were all involved. And so that could be like a dozen or 20
Normally
people.
there were 20 as
Yeah.
an average in the counting room. And
So
you need
that
to
makes
remember,
the envelope opening go really, really fast.
Yep.
Where now we're saving time on the actual ballot counting. We still need to figure out a way to deal with the envelope opening. And the real problem, frankly, in my opinion, was COVID. Secondarily, we just didn't realize how much time it would take because I think we relied too heavily on the fact that they have a machine to open the envelopes. That helps, but it doesn't help completely.
you know,
Thank
you
you,
still
Linda.
have,
That's what I wanted
still
to
have
know.
so much handling. You know, you still have that handling that you have to do. It's just like when you watch them do elections nationwide, you see them take it out of the envelopes, the privacy sleeves, but you still have somebody that sits there and smooths those little ballots out,
That's right. That's right.
you know, and it was just, it's an oversight on our part. And it's, but do you invalidate an election to hurry a process?
No, no, I totally agree with Linda's decision to not get N&E committee members mixed up in something, because in previous years, they were never allowed to be down in the counting room. It was only the counting people who would open the envelopes and straighten out the ballots, never N&E.
Well, what
So,
is our role then?
Watching.
To supervise. Michael, usually what happens, and that's something that's new, that's something that's different too. Usually there was one of us in the committee that sat back with Unilec during the whole time, because you supervise, you're there to answer questions. I know I sat with Andrew when we came up with a, you know, a final ballot count. Do we match after they registered all of ours? Different things like that. But when you're down in the counting room, you basically, for instance, when we count by ourselves, there are blue envelopes, and that's the first stage of the counting room process, is to open the blue envelopes and separate all the secrecy envelopes from the blue envelopes. Well, then we don't throw those blue envelopes away. Those blue envelopes go back in a case. They're secured. They're actually put back in alphabetical order for us. And that part of it we can do because the counters are done with that. But those blue envelopes are part of a process. Should there be a question about recounting, because they help, they show that you have these many ballots there, you can count registered envelopes.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
my whole point of wanting to be on this committee was so that, because I thought that we would be there in the process of making sure that everything was accountable. So
Yes, and that's what we do. We just don't do any of the counting. Now, you might be asked by the master counter, who is actually independent of the N&E committee. She might have a question about a ballot that she doesn't feel that she can answer, and a couple of counters have asked the question. She will call whoever is there from the N&E committee over and ask them to confer with her and decide and determine how this ballot was voted, and if you can tell how it was voted, or if you instruct the counters to disregard that part of the ballot. If
we're there watching every aspect of every step.
That's correct.
Okay.
You certainly can, and that's normally, for instance, last year at the AGM, there were not all N&E committee members there watching all the time, but somebody was there during every hour. Now, it may be different now because we've got a vendor and it's going to take a lot less time. But when there was a huge team, it would take days, literally. And so there would need to be an N&E person there to do what Linda just said. And also there were observers, two or three outside observers who just asked to watch. And N&E members would be there to answer their questions as well.
Okay.
Once again, it's going to be different going forward because it should be a lot more efficient.
I don't want to end up with another situation where there's people making accusations of whatever, like last year.
Yep.
Where a couple people had stacks of envelopes showing how this was not done correctly and all that. I never want to go through that again. That's why
Yes,
I
sir.
ran and why I wanted to be a part of this, so that I could stand up and say, no, we were there and we watched the entire process. Everything was on top of the table, handed correctly. The people watched this part, that part, and every part from start to finish. And there were no 20 people, not who, I don't know who was doing what, like last year. And I don't know what happened. I wasn't there, but there were all these accusations of all that. And we should never have to go.
Thank you, Michael. That's exactly why I was saying earlier, that's exactly why we went with an outside vendor in the first place. There's just fewer people involved, and therefore there's fewer people to watch and fewer opportunities to have an issue about what they did and why.
Yeah, especially in the light of, not to bring up the national election, but we are in a giant mess, and I don't want Sudden Valley to just be a small microcosm of the national election ever.
And you
Thank-
know what, Michael? I have to say, with using an independent vendor this year, I'm probably more assured of our vote this year than any time in the past.
Yeah,
I have to tell you, I wish you
good.
could, I hope you get a chance to watch their process, because it truly is remarkable.
well, I just hope that it's not just a chance. I mean, there's 9 people here. We should be, each one of us, in some section of the process so that we can validate that process.
Oh,
But there
Michael,
won't
you
be
will
9
be
There's
in.
only 9 of us. There's going to be only 5 after. The only
Okay.
reason we're all together this evening.
It's
All right.
the last meeting for some of us,
Okay,
and you will be involved. The biggest thing you'll be involved with is the envelopes, the ballots that are dropped off at the box inside Sudden Valley's admin building. That whole process, that still requires any committee members to make sure that those property owners have got the right to vote for anything other than just the ballot, and that they're on the list of property owners and so forth and so on. That's a process you will definitely get involved in.
okay.
It's one of the only things, Michael, that especially if you use a third-party vendor, if we go back to taking it all in-house, there will be days that you will have a conference room table full. And I do not use the term loosely. Ann and Don and Larry can vouch for this, and Bob. Last year, for the earlier SGM this year, we had stacks on the table at times where you were expected to vet 200-300 in a sitting when we would go in.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So.
Okay, so the last thing that we have.
Oh, wait a minute, Steve. Hey, Linda, Steve had his hand up.
Oh, okay, Steve, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's
Just
totally fine.
speak right up.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt. I was just trying to see what was going on and all that jazz.
Okay.
So you said there's 5 of us going forward. I realize this may be out of order on the agenda. So I was
That's fine. There's 5 of us. There's 4 of us. I have an ad out, hopefully, and I need to go look at admin and see if they got me added to a thing that needs to get posted
They
for
didn't get,
committee openings.
they didn't get N&E. They have ACC and finance up.
I had them add it just to general committees, but I didn't see a posting for that. So I'll maybe ask Lauren to just put a posting up for us separately.
I didn't see any listing on general committees. I looked about an hour before this meeting.
Yeah, I did too. And I think I'm just gonna go back in the morning and ask her to put something separate, and I'll put something together and just put it up there like we did for ACC and for finance. But
Thanks,
we'll wait
Linda.
then until we get.
That's really a good idea. There was a general Sudden Valley information email that went out today, and on that there was a little graphic of all of the committees that you could get involved in. I'm sure we're part of that graphic. But I think you're right. The only specific committees that were named were the other 2.
Well, they have such specific requirements, and it's why I always put them by themselves. Rich Bailey had developed that, if you're going to apply for ACC, this isn't just requires quite a bit of time of you.
And you need to know what you're talking about. So
Yes.
he's looking for people with expertise.
Yes. And same with finance. Once again, the bylaws specify that people should have some kind of financial background.
Right.
And so that's why I specifically make sure that those two committees have very specific, separate ads and announcements for vacancies.
So going forward right now, it's just the N&E committee is Nancy, myself, Linda, and Steve.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So the other
Welcome.
thing I wanted to ask before we adjourn the meeting. I don't know how far off that is, but I'd like to see if you guys have any advice for us new members, since you guys have done this for a little while now.
Gosh, we've talked so much, Steve, about the things that you're likely to do next year. Whatever you've heard so far, that's the best advice I could give to you.
Cool.
You're gonna be involved in some very nitpicky stuff, but thank goodness it's far less than it was in the last 45, 50 years.
And that's totally fair. I just figured I would ask. You know how with interviews sometimes you're like, is there any questions you wish you had been asked? Just give you guys the opportunity to be like, hey, this is
Why'd I sign up?
The answer is be prepared for anything.
Well, I have to also.
I think going forward, one of the things that still is something that needs attention is attention to bylaws and entity manual revisions,
Yes.
to bring them up to date,
Yes.
make them consistent with each other. And there's still a lot of issues that need to be resolved.
That's something that I went in and looked through the bylaws and was ahead of time trying to read up on this. And it'd be nice if we had something that we can look at, because that is so convoluted. I got
We
lost.
Michael, we tried.
When you get your book, your manual, which is what they were talking about, their binders.
We
you're
will
gonna
get a
have
binder.
You're going to have a copy.
All right.
of
Okay.
the
All right.
manual in there.
Oh, yeah, Steve, you might not have heard this. You do need to, if at all possible, show up at the orientation meeting for the board, for N&E, for ACC,
That's the January one, right?
or January 9, whatever it is. Yeah. So you should do that. And Michael, we put some bylaw amendments in to try and reduce the amount of confusion. Unfortunately, not all of them passed, but
Okay.
at least I think the ones that did pass reduced the confusion a little bit, mostly by reorganizing stuff so that they're in a little bit easier order to read. The major issue is you have to make sure you get an updated copy of the bylaws,
Okay.
not the bylaws from last year,
Yeah.
quote unquote 2019, 2020. You need the ones that have been approved as of this AGM.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Is there any way?
if the board approves, and they should, the certification of the election, we can find out whose job it is to update the bylaws, and they'll have that then when they have their organizational meeting in January. That'll be in their binder.
It should be, and that should be Rachel's job or somebody. She can point the finger. Michael, what were you going to say, Michael?
It may not be the right time right now, but looking at I'm sure going forward, do we have a monthly N&E meeting?
That's going to
Okay.
be discussed here down. Number 7 is coming
Okay,
up.
so I see that we need to get, I was just, if the N&E committee had any say in it or any means of doing it, is that we need to educate the voter better as to what things are, because I had no idea of what the amendments or like what the measures were and what they meant. And I actually called Linda and asked her, what is this? And she basically explained it to me. She didn't tell me how to vote, but she explained it to me. I know I know two couples that are in Cabo. They left. They have business down there that they do with fish buying and stuff. And they wanted to vote, but they weren't allowed to because they left before the vote came out, and they couldn't get stuff mailed to them in Mexico because the mail in Mexico is a mess. And so they weren't able to vote. And if there was any way we could set up an absentee ahead of time sort of thing.
Oh,
But I'm sure that we could.
Oh, great idea.
That's a wonderful topic for you guys to take up next year.
Okay.
Absolutely.
in
I
fact,
love it. I
Michael,
love it.
Michael, I believe they reached out to Unilect.
They did.
And yes, and they asked them, is there a mailing address? I was prepared to I will say this, and I'll probably get into trouble for it. I knew that we had extra money in our mailing budget for things, and I was willing to try and find, to spend additional money if they could go to a post office and, have it mailed there and then go pick it up, or if they had
Well,
an
the
address.
problem is you get down, and I was in Costa Rica, and your address in Costa Rica is, I am the fifth house from the corner. You don't get your mail. That's what he said. He says that the address here is so convoluted that you just don't get your mail.
Yeah.
And so it's not worth even attempting.
But that's definitely
something
something to look, but Michael, you're right. It's something to look into.
Okay.
I want people's votes to count.
Yeah.
I want them to count. That's really important. Even if it's just 1 out of 3,000, it's important.
Hey, they pay their dues. They deserve to vote.
Yep.
Yeah.
So my last topic is kind of for the old committee, and it's item number 5, and it's the third-party election vendor evaluation. I had several comments from different members. I think I'm missing one of yours, Anne, that I didn't get to.
Oh, okay.
But it's like, I'm gonna do an overview, and then you can all chime in if you would. We all agree that we would hire them again in the blink of an eye to handle our election.
Absolutely.
No problem. Any problems they ran into this year was unanticipated. And
That's right.
now that I know better, and once you see you don't make the same mistake twice.
Well, you hope not, but we learned some things
Yes.
that we didn't know, and also that we could never have expected because of friggin' COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who knows how long. I saved all of my maintained 6 feet distance and my arrows. Rachel can tell you they're sitting in my closet downstairs.
Listen, we have no idea. And if there's another SGM,
Yep.
well, it could happen even earlier than next November.
Yes. But it's just, they're a really good company. They're very kind, responsive people to work with.
And
only-
Linda, that goes to reinforce the message you didn't see from Anne, which was talking about how calm and professional they were. I thought those were great comments, and I'd love to have those added to the evaluation.
You will. I wrote up an email to you all. I'm going to gather all of these thoughts together that are in this little continuous thing that we did, Larry. I think Don started it, and I'll add Ann's. We're going to do an evaluation, and before it gets placed in the minutes for this meeting, I'll send it all out to you and get a final blessing from you all before it's published for everything. My only issues, and they're actually very easily, I believe, resolved.
Yeah.
Is the call-in number is merely an answering service.
Yes.
And I believe they use them for several of their elections.
Mm.
and some of their elections are union elections. And one of the things that a lot of people here in the Valley were upset about that sent for replacement ballots is they were asked to provide their last four numbers of their social.
And that shouldn't be a problem, but guess what? It is. So if the NNE for this next year can work with Unilect to come up with a different way of verifying that this person on the phone is the person I should be talking with,
Yeah,
that would be great. I don't know what it is, but hey, that's, you guys get to do that.
I know. It's just, it gave the impression to some people that Sudden Valley was supplying their social security numbers to
The
an
last
outside
four are
source.
just random numbers. You can't do anything with them anyway.
I know, but
Very
Michael,
good.
it's
Shouldn't be a problem.
it's a
I actually spoke with Catherine or Christine or whatever her name was,
Catherine.
and she grieved over the fact that I hadn't got my ballot yet, and went out of her way to give me her, she said, call me anytime. As soon as you get it, call me. She wanted to make sure, she really cared, and that spoke volumes to me.
Oh God, Michael, thank you for
Thank you.
having that experience and sharing it with us, because that's the kind of thing that other customers of theirs had shared with us about Catherine in particular, that she was so responsive and so devoted to serving her customers. So it speaks volumes for the company.
Yeah, she called me and gave me her phone number. I guess Linda had talked to her and said I hadn't got it, and she actually called me and talked with me and gave me her cell number and said, I want you to call me as soon as you get it, or if in the morning, if you don't, let me know, and all that. So,
Well, they could just
Saturday morning at the in-person election, I spent the whole morning with Catherine in the cafe, vetting and getting voters their ballots. And she was so good with everybody. I really was impressed.
Hey, and you've a couple of times you've tried to get in and you got cut off.
Oh, now I forget. No. Shoot. Well, okay. So here's one thing. Steve, you mentioned that any advice, and I have to say to new members that I worked with two other directors or chairmen of the NNE committee prior to Linda. She is phenomenal. She's so organized. She knows what she's talking about. She is very forgiving. I would have been fired from the first day had she been
No,
but I have just gotten so much. I've learned so much and become so fond of the people on this committee. And it's because of Linda's leadership and just the way she works things and the quality of the people. So you're going to have a wonderful experience.
And I've got to second that. I've worked with Linda since I got on the board in October of 2012.
Yep.
And I can tell you right now, we do not agree on everything. And we have had some intense disagreements, especially in the earlier years. And I have got to tell you that she is one of the most professional, honorable people I have ever worked with.
Amen.
Thank you guys. You make me blush. I'm going to have to go to.
I was wondering.
One thing
I want donuts to the meetings.
Hey, she brought food to the AGM.
Well,
that
was
is so
great.
Sweet. That was so unnecessary. Thank you so much.
Oh, but you who stood outside in the cold, you all ought to know Larry was the outside member that did all the temperatures and the COVID tests before we could even let members into the community center to vote.
Oh, thank you,
That was
baby.
lots of fun.
Thank you, baby.
One of the things we talked about the committee this year, and I think it's something to take up with whomever we have do our printing and mailing, whether we do it ourselves or whatever. This year, because Unilec didn't know us well, they gave us a really early date to have our print materials to them.
Yes, yes.
And we need to make sure that when we set a print date with anyone in the future, that that goes beyond the 5 days stipulated in the N&E manual.
And the bylaws.
I don't think it's in the bylaws. I
Yes,
think,
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's in the bylaws. I checked this year because of the screw up.
okay, that they have 5 days that they can, 5 business days to withdraw. And after that time, and this whole thing that happened this year with one candidate and using an old application, we just need to it will just make all of our lives easier going forward.
Yes, yes.
It's just something you don't anticipate, but it's something that we certainly need to deal with due to the fact that calendars change every year. You can't always assume that you can't write down a given day.
No.
So you have to go with the flow of the calendar. You know, this year was kind of a late year. And I think next year somebody said that it'll be the 6th of November, I think, but it was during the board meeting. So I might be talking off the top of my head. So I apologize. But it's something that's real that we all, after the problem this year, we realized that that's real important. And I think the other thing is that we need to make sure, and I think it says it in the bylaws too, that they use the current year application or it's going to be disqualified. It's not going to be a question of, I bent over backwards and, thought that I could fix it and everything would be okay. And it's just something that we need to make a rule for us that if it's not on a current application for the year, that it's not accepted. We still would need to contact that candidate, but that's how you deal with it.
Linda, I would only say, no, that's not in the bylaws, but I absolutely agree with your point. It should be in the N&E manual that in order for an applicant for any position to be considered a valid applicant, they need to put it in on a current application form. And Michael, to get back to something you said earlier, education.
Yeah.
Education is incredibly important, and I hate to say it, incredibly difficult in this community.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, Rachel will tell you, and every other staff person will tell you, no matter how many hundreds of times you answer a question, there will be another 100 people who don't know the answer, and they will need it again. It's just an ongoing, never-ending process.
Nancy, just something to say? And then
Yeah,
Michael.
I understand the lawyer, our association lawyer wrote up something on that subject. And I wonder if those of us on the committee get to see that letter.
Yes, ma'am, you do. And I don't know why it wasn't put on the website. I know they asked for that, but most definitely I'd be more than happy to share his opinion with you.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I'll just say, lawyers' opinions are often, well, to start with, they're always privileged to the board. But the board has the authority to let them become known to the community. And there are a number of lawyers' opinions that should be released to the community as a whole. And there are a number of existing opinions down through the years that apply to N&E. Now, whether they still apply or not, that depends on the current bylaws, that depends on the current N&E manual, but there's no reason that those should be secret, certainly from the N&E committee, and a number of them may be useful for the community as a whole. The difficulty is a lawyer's letter. You have to know the context of why the letter was written before you necessarily understand what the answer means.
Nancy, there were 2 times this year, the one reference you have where I asked and the board finally voted to have it released.
Yes.
But earlier this year, when the recall of the directors happened, there was a whole information from both the attorney on quorums and talk about a committee that needed that information. And I got chewed out because I shared before it was released. But we were the committee that asked the question.
Yeah.
So I just, there are times when sometimes it's a double-edged sword and we just do the best we can to work around it and see that we have adequate information to work with.
And there's some advice for the committee members. You have a relationship with the board. The N&E committee is semi-independent, meaning the committee decides what the N&E manual should be. The board approves the N&E manual. Until the board approves it, it's not official. But the N&E committee is independently elected and should be primarily independent from board control. And I have had issues in 2020 with situations where the board tries to exert control that I don't believe it has. But people can always disagree about that stuff. The bottom line is, on any particular issue, whatever your opinion, N&E is semi-independent of the board. But you will have to work with them because they need to be educated about what the extent of that independence is, as do the committee members. It's a give and take, a pull and tug.
Larry, as I recall, there was an incident regarding specifically that issue that caused the resignation of the N&E committee chair.
Mm.
Oh,
Yes, if you will recall, yes, almost a year ago, certainly 11 months ago.
It's like, it's this real fine line you walk sometimes. And it's a scary line sometimes. It's just, we try to make sure we've dotted all of our I's and we have crossed all of our T's, and that we have a good, what we consider to be a real strong rock to stand on if you're going to take a stand on something, if it's necessary.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, we finished our evaluation. I promised to the old committee, before I put the evaluation together, I will put a draft together, have you all look at it. Anna will gather your thoughts because I know I didn't get them yet. And we'll do that, and then we'll make that part of our minutes from this meeting, along with my statement, and these sort of things. So we'll have that sort of thing for anybody going forward that needs it. I have one last bit of business, which is the next meeting, and it's for only the new members.
Okay, well then I'm going to sign off because the new members may have business to deal with, and that's not for me. And I will repeat what I said on Saturday. I have been honored to work with you folks.
Yeah.
Truly honored. Ann and Bob in particular, I didn't know you guys beforehand. I've been really happy to work with you, and just God bless you all. So thanks a lot.
thank you.
Thanks,
you, Larry.
Larry.
And good luck
Larry.
to new people.
I'm going to
All
sign
right.
off too, and it's been a pleasure. And I can only have one thing to say to the new committee: welcome. And last but not least, have fun.
We did.
We did.
I wish you all well. I'm
Oh.
signing off also.
Okay.
Good night,
If I can
everybody.
figure out how to do it.
Night. So with the remaining members, the only thing I have that I realize I need to deal with, and with the holidays coming up, we need to think about it. Our next meeting's gonna be, if we need to, the end of this month, but it's gonna be right after Thanksgiving and stuff. Do you really think we need to meet? You know, and then and are you all, I know, Michael, you weren't with us before. Everybody kind of said we could still do the last Monday of every month. And then at 6:30 in the evening, will that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay. But
I wasn't here, one, because I didn't really know there was a meeting, and that wasn't that clear, I guess, for somehow. But two, I watched the election, and my grandkids got dropped off here for us, and I just bailed on everything and went down and played with them.
Michael, don't feel bad. I had to delay the meeting twice. I think John was ready to shoot me, but that would be okay. I understood. It was just Saturday was a very long, a really long day, guys, really long day. And so I guess what my question to you guys is, and you can answer me in an email, I don't know, unless you have something that's really pressing, that we need to meet until maybe in January for the first time. I don't know. Do you want to talk about goals beforehand for next year? If you guys have ideas of goals you'd like to look at for next year, I'd be happy to have a meeting. But I also know that some people travel, or you have your off time with your families over the holidays, and I just don't want to interfere with that. Michael, you in particular, you've got your grandkids and family, and
I have no idea what's going on for Thanksgiving. Nobody's actually verified anything with me, even though I've asked. And
it's scary times.
We're pretty centered around, we usually go to our in-laws, but they're in their 80s and they're being very careful with this COVID stuff. So I don't know if we're going to go. But I'm on Mondays, the last Monday of the month, I'm open. I really don't think we have, in my opinion, I really don't think there's much that we really need to do until next year. But I do have a bunch of ideas.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I was going to say. It's usually what the first meeting of the year is kind of what we all think. We maybe have some goals in mind that we'd like to work on with the committee through the year. I am hoping this is the year of no SGM. Nancy's looking at me.
I don't really see anything that would cause one.
I don't either. No.
I mean,
I think it's going to be a quiet year, but you never know.
I think the homeowners got the board that they want, and I think we're going to have to wait and see what happens on that. Now, I don't know about the people that don't have the board they want, what's going to happen, but that's the other side of the coin then. But I think the majority are happy right now and hopeful. And if we address all this, I think educating the homeowner as to what's going on and communicating better. I think the view is a joke, in my personal opinion. We gathered a couple thousand email addresses when we did
that's right.
When we did the petition for limiting dues. I had a zip drive, whatever you call it, that had a couple thousand email addresses on it. And I think Sonia has it, or Josh, and they created a website called We Are Sudden Valley, or Sudden Valley Strong, or something like that, which has not been utilized for anything other than an advertising page. And there's better ways to communicate with the homeowner that could be done.
Thought for today, and we're not going to spend a lot of time because I know John and I can see Rachel's tired. Long days. She had payroll, guys. But a thought for the day, and we maybe could work with John from Sudden Valley IT. What about an N&E website sort of thing through the Sudden Valley website, where if we want to put out just information about an election or something coming up, that's where you can go. You know, I know we can't do Facebook pages, but maybe we can. I don't know if John has some ideas about that.
Yeah, so not to go too far into what we're working on with the site, that is something that we've identified that we'd like to do more of, which is kind of sites within the site.
Mhm.
So N&E would have its own sort of sub-site. The board of directors would have its own sub-site. Right now, it's just kind of it's a very basic flat page. There's not much going on with it. So yeah, that's something that is on our hit list, actually kind of through communications committee. That's sort of part of all that. And I'm
We can
involved with
talk to John.
communications. So
I just wonder if that's the way to go, to where you're not on Facebook, where all it takes is one post from somebody to send everybody off the deep end. If they want to copy what information we're putting out there, that's fine with me. But it would just be like I think what Michael's getting at is more information. That's just information to people.
Correct information.
Yes.
Not innuendo or gossip.
Yeah. I agree with you, but it's something to think of. So do we think the end of January is the soonest we need to meet? And Steve, what's your thoughts?
Well, I was just going to touch base real quick with Michael talking about that thumb drive. Depending on, what was disclosed when you gathered that information, you may or may not be able to cross-reference that with N&E without violating some of the CAN-SPAM acts that were passed back in the past, because they have to have an agreement from the person who owns that email address to be able to communicate with them.
Everyone we got email addresses gave it to us so that we could communicate with them.
Yeah.
But the question is, who did they give it to? Did they give it to the N&E committee? Did they give it to Sudden Valley?
They supplied it on a sheet of paper that came along with the petition, I believe.
It was given to the petition gatherers
Yeah.
for them to be able to communicate to them.
Right.
It wasn't given to the board. It wasn't given to the N&E directly. It was given to whoever was gathering the signatures. They said, if you'd like to get more information, give me your email address. And they said, oh, we want the information. It has not been utilized correctly at all.
And I'm not sure that we can, is what I guess I'm trying to say.
Okay,
Because
and that's
we
part of
didn't-
the discussion.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think Steve can explain maybe more. I think I know a little bit what he's talking about. There's a section in our bylaws
Yeah.
about if we communicate with people electronically, you have to have their permission on file.
Yeah. But I think
know
if we
what he's-
probably, so back to the original, we can work that out in
Yep.
January.
Yes, we
I'm
can.
all for waiting till the first Monday in January to have a meeting.
Okay, so
The first or the last?
Or I mean, the
he
last
means our first
Monday
meeting
of
be in
January.
January.
first meeting last Monday.
Okay.
I'm looking, I believe, at the 25th of January then.
Mhm.
I believe.
You are right.
Okay. Well, having no further,
We have
Business
one thing,
conduct.
Linda.
oh, you do?
I have a
Okay.
question about your handout that you posted. The first two pages of this, so you have like the Sudden Valley letterhead thing.
Uh-huh,
And then the next page has your signature on the bottom.
yep,
And it's labeled page 2. Those are
Yep.
things you worked out. And the only change is basically to change the word vote to the word property.
yes.
There's this other page, and I'm not sure who did it. This Sudden Valley Community Association electronic certification statement. Is that from Unilex?
This one?
Yes, this one. Whoops.
There's
Yeah.
two, how do I say it? Yes, there's two that go together. You first make this out, and it's a spreadsheet that's ours. Whoever is chair ends up putting this all together from the information you get from the postal reports and from Unilec. Used to get it from the tally sheets. And then this is all done here, and then it's turned into the report.
And this is the report, the thing with the
Yes.
Sun Valley letterhead, and it's 2
Yes.
pages.
Yes.
Okay,
Sometimes it's not two, but if you have a fairly long election, it's, like the one year when they changed, I don't know, like half the bylaws, it probably was 3 or 4 pages. I don't think I was on the committee then at that time, thank God.
yeah, so again, this question for this, did Unilex put this together?
No, we do. That's always been part of our document.
Okay, that's yours. And then
Yes.
the Unilex stuff is this postage statement wizard thing.
Yep. It's like their first page has a stamp on it. This first page here, can you see okay? And it's 3 pages, and that's their report to us.
Okay, with the little gold seal at the bottom.
Yes, indeed. Which says if you
Okay.
have any problems, I'll be responsible. Works for me.
Okay,
So we were going with January 25th at what time?
6:30.
Okay.
sorry, guys. I wanted to, while it was in front of
It's
us.
fresh in your mind. I hear you. Well, there being no other business to conduct, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
Did we make a motion to accept the minutes or whatever at the first?
Accept the agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was at the beginning.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I didn't hear that, but okay.
Yeah, because I added those couple of items where I wanted to read a statement, and I added a number 7 for the next meeting so we could discuss that before we left.
Okay.
So if I could have a motion and a second to adjourn, please.
I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Yay.
Well, folks, I will see you in January. I'll probably be in touch with just little emails about things we might think about. If you have ideas for the agenda in January and you go, look, I really want to come loaded for bear, I'm going to be ready to discuss this,